On August 1st, 2019, Paizo released the second edition of their tabletop RPG system, Pathfinder, and with it came an interesting claim. A short while before second edition was actually published, Jason Bowman, director of game design at Paizo, made this post on Reddit saying, "Hey there all, the post was made just to show off an interesting tidbit I saw with the new system. If you make your choice of ancestry, heritage, background, class, and major class choice, you get about 42,000 combinations." And now here we are just a few months later with not only the core rulebook out, but also the first major iteration of errata. And I found myself looking at this post again, and it got me thinking, how about we go ahead and verify this claim? And while we're at it, let's take it a step further. Let's actually see how far we can go in all the smaller choices that you make during character creation to the point where maybe we can succeed in getting every single person on the planet their own unique character. Let's start with the basics. To start with, there are going to be 6 ancestries to choose from, which are the new name for races, 35 possible backgrounds, which 5e players will certainly recognize, and then finally 12 possible classes. Multiplying these together, we get about 2,500. Not too impressive so far, but we still have 2 more choices to dive into before we can verify Bowman's claim. While we're at it, let's get a counter going. According to Wikipedia's list of countries by population page, out of the world's 223 countries, how many could individually have all of their citizens get their own unique characters? For this, we'll be going by the July 2019 populations, and to start with, we have a whopping 3, which, let's be honest, is going to be more surprising if it was higher than that. It just gives us a starting spot. Now, let's dig a little deeper into ancestries. Alright, so the 4th choice we're going to be making for our characters is which heritage they're going to be. This is going to be a deeper subculture of any particular ancestry. For example, for elves, you could be an Arctic elf, or maybe a seer elf, or perhaps a woodland elf. And all the ancestors have a few of these to choose from. There's the numbers. Great. We sum those, we get 29. Pop that number back into our box here, multiply that out, and now we're up to 12,000. Alright, so we're getting there. And this also boosts our country count up to 10. So now it's the class's turn, because the backgrounds don't really have a further choice to make that we care about, at least for this video. Into the classes, there's a lot of different names for these. For example, rogues, they can be the racket. For sorcerers, it can be their bloodlines. In general, we're going to call them a subclass. So for example, rogues, you could be a ruffian rogue, or a scoundrel, or just a classic thief. Throw all those numbers in there. Great, there's a total, 42. Throw that number back in there, multiply it back out, and there it is, 42,000, which roundabout is 40,000. Jason Bowman's claim is verified, and this brings our country counter up to 21. This is the part where I actually argue we haven't gone far enough, even within these 5 choices. Let's open the classes back up for a second. There are a couple of these where I'm going to say that there are actually more choices represented here. To start with, let's look at the Barbarian and their 5 subclasses. These are called instincts, or the source of the Barbarian's rage. We have Animal, Dragon, Fury, Giant, and Spirit. But within these, we have more than 1 choice each. For example, for the Animal Instinct, there are actually 9 different animals to choose from, and these have both flavor and mechanical differences. For a Dragon, there are going to be 10 different types of dragon you can choose from, which will affect things like what kind of breath weapon you have. And then the other 3 are normal, but this, I would say, gives us 22 possible choices within the Barbarian, not 5. So we throw that number back in there, and next we have the Sorcerer, whose bloodlines have a similar thing happening. Draconic is back, we get 10 choices. Elemental, it's the 4 basic elements that a lot of us are familiar with, and this brings the choices for here also up to 22. Throw that in there. Now, finally, the Wizard. The Wizard's 4 choices are considered which thesis that they're researching, but then the Wizard also chooses which school of magic they're going to be studying. This is a multiplier because you have both independent choices, meaning the total number of possible choices within the Wizard subclass, I would argue, is 36. Great, now we put all of these together, and the new subclass total is actually going to be 103. Throw that back up there, multiply those, and we have 104,000 and a country counter up to 34. This, I would argue, is much closer to the actual total for those first 5 choices, which is phenomenal. But let's keep going. Now let's start talking about the feats that you choose at level 1. First, we're going to start with the Ancestry feat. Alright, throw that out, move that over, and bam, there's all the possible feats that every ancestry currently has. Now, I can hear some of you saying, but wait, humans have 7. I know, just put a pin in that for now. Trust me, we'll get to that. Alright, except humans, we gotta talk about their different heritages, because it turns out there's actually different number of feats for the different heritages. For the first 2, yeah, it's a standard 6, great. But then half-elf and half-orc are actually gonna open up different optional feat lists for you. For example, for half-elf, you're actually going to be able to choose either one of the human feats, or one of the elf feats, or one of the half-elf feats. Same thing with half-orc for human, orc, and half-orc. There's our numbers for that. We actually have to add all those together. Great, cool. Now we have to go back to the other table and actually account for this by merging the 2 columns. Alright, there you go. For 2 of the heritages, there's 6. For half-elf, there's 14. For half-orc, there's 11. Simplify that. Great. And believe me, this is only the first of many times we're going to have to merge some of these columns just to make sense of them. Except we're not done with this table. I nearly forgot we have to account for one of the half-elf feats, elf atavism. It says a lot, but the important bit is you gain the benefits of the elf heritage of your choice. Since there are 5 elf heritages, this means that this feat actually represents 5 choices, not 1. So we have to come back here, pry open those half-elf feats a little bit, simplify it back down again, and now we're ready to move on. Move that over, multiply across the rows, sum down that final column, and we have our new total of 221. Now, it's time for the classes. Bring that back down, throw that out, and here's our feat column. Now you will notice all of these rows don't actually have a number for the first level feat. That's because as spellcasters, they don't actually get a first level feat, presumably because they get, well, spellcasting. Well, except we need to talk about the wizards again. Remember how I said that wizards have 9 schools of magic to choose from? I kind of lied. There are really only 8 schools of magic, with the 9th option being to become a universalist wizard, basically jack of all trades who doesn't specialize in any particular type of magic. Since those wizards don't get the nifty spell specialization bonuses that the other wizards get, as a trade-off they do in fact get to choose a class feat at level 1. So, similar to the half-elf feat, we merge those columns and pry those options apart. There are 6 wizard class feats to choose from at level 1. Great. We move on, multiply, and sum once again, and our total is going to be 256. Throw that back up there, and we have a new total of 1.9 million, and our country counter is at 84. We're doing great. And now, it's time to pull that pin I mentioned earlier about humans. Time to talk about the 7th human ancestry feat. So, move that up, we're gonna need the room. And let's talk about Adapted Cantrip. This is in the minority of first level ancestry feats currently in that it actually has a prerequisite, and is in the even smaller minority of being a prerequisite that we actually care about for this video. You must have the spellcasting class feature in order to take it, which, for level 1, means you must be one of the spellcasting classes. This means that in order to not massively overcount the number of possible combinations, we need to combine this choice with only the class options from those classes. Alright, so we move that over, we're going to need lots of room, move that down, and we have this whole new row. For ancestry right there, you are choosing the human ancestry, any of the 4 heritages, and that one particular feat. Now for the class number, let's go back up to this table, and we only care about summing those. So we bring that back down, there's going to be 87. And you can see our total has not really changed, neither has our country counter. That's okay, that's kind of the point. We didn't want to overcount, so we definitely expected this to be a lot smaller, not contribute as much. However, humans are gonna human, and we need to talk about their heritages once again. Because you may be flipping through the book and these descriptions, and you pull up a versatile heritage, which says humanity's versatility and ambition. It fuels the sun's to be the most common ancestry in most nations throughout the world. Select a general feat of your choice for which you meet the prerequisites. Okay, fine. So let's just at least start with looking at the actual general feat list for the rule book. There's a bunch with a ton of prerequisites, but we can make this a little easier on ourselves by breaking these up into categories. The first category are the ones that don't have a prerequisite, so we can just straight add those. Awesome. Then we have the ones which require some sort of ability score, which screwed that. So we're not counting those. I do not feel like counting the total number of possible ways you could get 14 Constitution or 14 Dexterity. No, thank you. Hopefully it won't be that big of a loss. I don't think it will be. And then next, the third category are the ones that require some sort of skill, which, okay, I was hoping that we could stick with concrete numbers, but I guess we can try and estimate this. So, alright, first I tried gathering the minimum skills that every class is definitely going to be trained in, which I did. Then maybe we could just try counting how many skills a class would be able to train in, assuming an intelligence of 10, which I did. Then how many feats each skill is actually going to unlock, which I did. Alright. So what we get out of that is that on average, there are going to be 5.8 skills that any particular class can get trained in, and then on average, each of those is going to unlock 3.7 feats. Cool, okay. Still not a huge fan of fuzzier numbers, but I'm sure it'll be close enough. And we throw that in there, round them down just to be conservative about it, and there's going to be 14 other feats that either have no prerequisite or negligible one, like, say, being trained in at least one skill. Great, cool, everyone is. So now, this is going to be the actual total number of possible combinations for the versatile heritage. We throw that up there. There's our real sum, 389. Throw that in there, and yes, for humans with adapted cantrip, we'll do the 3 heritages plus the 29 additional options you get for that 4th one. Cool. And we have 3.5 million, bringing our country counter up to 101. And that's it. We've accounted for the first level feats, making this the next breaking off point depending on how you see the definition of unique character. But there's still more choices you make when creating a level 1 character. Sure, the onus becomes more and more on the player to actually roleplay those differences, but there are still technically more choices that make the character unique. So next, let's look at alignment. Now, we're bringing up the class table again because this isn't going to be a simple multiplier by 9. No, we're pulling up this table again because some classes have alignment restrictions. Namely the champion, which is the more alignment-agnostic version of the paladin many of you are probably familiar with, the paladin simply being the lawful good subclass of the champion. Alright, so let's make some room here. Move those out, and then move those out of the way, and then throw that in there. And you will immediately notice that the header of that column says not only alignment, but also deities and domains, because all 3 of those things are going to interact, and it's just not worth trying to make multiple columns for them. Now, let's talk about the deities. In 2nd edition so far, we're going to have 20 deities and 5 philosophies, which are just general ways of life that aren't tied to any particular deity. Now, I can also hear some of you saying, but wait, there are 4 philosophies. What is the 5th one? I threw in a 5th one because many players will just not choose a deity or philosophy to follow, and I see that as a valid enough player option that a lot of them take that it's worth counting for this. Also in 2nd edition, every deity is actually going to have a list of alignments that you must be one of in order to worship them. So they may have just only 2 or 3 alignments rather than all 9, so we need to account for that. So given any particular alignment, how many deities are actually available to you? Great, cool. We have our sum, 55. For all of the characters who can choose a deity or a philosophy, we have that number to work with as well. So let's take these 2 numbers, throw them back up into our class table, and now let's talk about the champion. Alright, so first of all, let's remove the subclass number for champion because the champion is unique in that the different subclasses are perfectly tied with the alignments. So there's really no point in counting that there when we're going to count that here with the alignments. So far, there are only 3 subclasses for the champion, which correspond to the 3 good alignments. Therefore, we only care about those 3 deity numbers, which adds up to 21. And now we're not done, because one of those 2 feats that you can take as the champion is Deity's Domain. You embody an aspect of your deity, choose one of your deity's domains from those listed on page 441. You gain the domain's initial domain spell as a devotion spell. So, we need to talk about the domains that every deity has. Every deity is going to have, thankfully so far, making the math easier, 4 possible domains to choose from, meaning if you choose the first alignment, you just have those 21, but if you choose Deities domain, you're going to have that many multiplied by 4. Awesome. All right, so back to here. We need to make some room because these numbers are going to get big. There we go. There's those. And now we're at 292 million, meaning that our country counter is now up to 230. We are so close. What else can we add? We might have some luck going over the class feats again just to see if they include more decisions in the details, maybe? Unfortunately, doing that, I only really found Animal Companion, where we have a few animal companions to choose from. It also only applies to the Ranger for our purposes, since the Druid doesn't get a class feat at level 1, but let's throw it in, see what happens. Alright, we're back here. The Ranger normally has 5 feats to choose from. Wipe that out for a second, and now it's 4 plus 8, because there are, in fact, 8 different animal companions you can choose from. So add that back up, it's up to 22,000. Not much of a boost, but it's something. Throw that back up here, and we're now at 313 million, meaning that our country counter is still at 230. What else can we do? This is basically it, right? As far as the things that I'm actually able to calculate, right? Oh god, I have to talk about ability scores now. Alright, fine. We have our 6 normal ability scores: Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. Now, I did mention before that as we get further and further into this, the onus is more on the player to actually roleplay these differences at the table in order for these characters to be unique. So I get it if we're really going into some subtle territory where a lot of people are going to disagree about uniqueness at this point. Fair. But let's consider 2 barbarians. Barbarian number 1, she's got a strength of 16 and a constitution of 14. Barbarian number 2 has a strength of 14 and a constitution at 16. Now, of course, numerically there's a difference, and I'd argue even at the table, these are going to be very similar characters, assuming that they made all of the other same choices. Now let's consider 2 other barbarians. One has a strength of 18, a con of 10, and the other vice versa. I think we can all agree that these are going to be very different characters, not only numerically, but in playstyle. Somewhere in the middle of these 2 things is a clear distinction between uniqueness and probably not unique. Where in the middle that is, I cannot mathematically decide, so we are just going to count them all as unique. Now, thankfully for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, your sources of ability scores are actually pretty cut and dry as far as this particular video goes, so admittedly this is going to be easier than it could have been. First, let's open the ancestries back up. Yes, we have an abilities column now. Most ancestors are going to get 2 pre-assigned ability boosts. Then you can freely choose a 3rd ability boost as long as it's not one of the 2 already boosted. That's easy then. You simply choose from one of the 4 remaining possibilities. Awesome. Humans, meanwhile, are gonna human. They're a bit different in that you can freely choose 2 different boosts. That's it, they're not pre-assigned. So, 6, then 5 choices, that's 30. Alright, multiply those out, and oh boy, that was a few hundred before. Oh man. Alright, so that's 7,000 going up there. We're accounting for the top row off screen, and now it's time to talk about backgrounds. Yes, backgrounds get their own tables now. It's not just the 35 you have available to choose from. Now, each of the backgrounds is going to give us a choice between 2 ability scores to boost, then we can freely choose the second one. Cool, 2 choices, then 5, that's 10. This whole thing's getting multiplied by 10, and now 350 is the value in that column. The classes are the last source of ability boosts, and they're going to be a lot simpler. Most of the classes just simply have 1 key ability score that they're going to give you a free boost to, and then a few of the martial classes are going to actually have 2. This is generally a choice between strength and dexterity to give you more options for your martial character. Cool, multiply those out. We're now up to almost 27,000. Oh boy. Now here comes the fun multiplication. Alright, multiply this out and we get 67 billion possible character combinations. This is not only enough to fill up an entire planet of people, but in fact every person is going to get 8 unique possible character sheets. Oh boy, folks. we have done it. In fact, we have overshot it thanks to the ability scores. Oh boy. Now, it's also worth pointing out that if I didn't split out the humans with adapted cantrip, I would have overcounted by about 8 billion, being off by 11%. This is an entire extra planet's worth of characters that would not have actually been true characters for this video. So the more complicated this all gets, especially as the humans continue to dominate, the more this percentage grows, and that's why it was important for us to pull that out. So this is it. We have done it. We have succeeded in giving everyone their own unique character. And in fact, many. And here we are at the end of the video. Thank you so much for checking this out, and if you've liked it, let me know and I'll continue making these types of videos. I always enjoyed doing these types of nerdy data or number-oriented deep dives, and I certainly have more videos in mind. With Pathfinder 2e in particular, I'll be doing the rest of these videos in chunks instead of one book at a time. For example, the next video in this series would be looking at all the rest of the 2e books that came out in 2019. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.